Okay, but Hashem, today we are holding in the Sanhedrin. We're in the 10th parak. We are holding on Pei Vav Amud Aleph, 7 lines from the bottom, 8683. Okay, so let's get into today's sugya and a couple of concepts to start with. First of all, you have to remember, we're talking here about a case of kidnapping, and to be hayav mita of chenek for kidnapping, a Jew has to kidnap another Jew, has to work that Jew, and then has to sell that Jew. Okay? Then be hayav mita of chenek. Okay, that's number one. Number two, in order for this to happen, you have to have a warning, you have to have witnesses. Okay? Now, in general, we have something called hazama, which means that every testimony that's given by witnesses have to be available to be refuted. And how is it refuted? Becoming Adam Zomim, which means if Reuben and Shimon come and say, I saw Levi doing this on Wednesday, and then Yehuda and Yisachar come and say, Reuben and Shimon couldn't have seen anything because they weren't here where they say they were with us in Florida. They become Adam Zomim. And what punishment do we give Adam Zomim? We give them whatever they wanted to do to the other fellow, we do to them. That's the background to go into today's Gemara. So today's Gemara starts off, Itmar. Eidei Geneva ve'eidei Mechira v'nefesh shehuzmu. Okay? So in this case, by the guy who kidnaps and sold, you have two groups of witnesses. You have the first two, Reuben and Shimon, come and say, so you have Reuben kidnapped Shimon. Okay, Reuben kidnapped Shimon. Levi and Yehuda come and say, we saw Reuben kidnap Shimon. Then Yisachar and Zevulun come and they say, we saw Reuben sell Shimon. So it's coming in two steps, two different testimonies to establish that he's chayav mitah. Okay, does that work? And if it does work, what happens if they're made Adam Zomimim? Do you kill all of them? So Imar, Adam Geneva, the Adam Mechir, Benefesh Huzmu, they're made Adam Zomimim. Chizkiah Amar, Chizkiah says, Ein Hargin. If they're proven to be false, we don't kill them. Yochanan says, Nahargin, we will kill them. What's going on? What's the core of the machloket? So Chizkiah the Amar Kabi Akiva the Amar Davar v'lechatzi Davar. Yochanan Amar Karabanon the Amar Davar v'afilu chatzi Davar. Okay, so the question is, there's a pasuk. There's a pasuk, and the Torah Shalom brings this pasuk, and the pasuk says, "Lo yakum eid echad beish l'chol avon u'l'chol chatat b'chol chet asher yichita al pi shnayim eidim al pi shloisha eidim yakum davar." You need 2 or 3 witnesses to make the matter stick. Yakum davar, the matter stands. The question here is, how do you understand the word matter? Davar. Does davar mean the whole matter? That witnesses who give half a testimony, it will never combine and it won't work. And that's Chizkiah and that's Rabbi Akiva. That you have to have a whole matter and a half a matter doesn't work. Or Rabbi Yochanan understands davar as being any part of the matter. And therefore, if you have 2 groups of witnesses, but together they establish the proper testimony, it works. So, according to Chizkiah and Rabbi Akiva, these 2 sets of witnesses come and say this guy, one guy sold, one group says he sold, one group says he kidnapped, one said he sold it. We don't get anybody in trouble. We don't get the guy in trouble, and if they made him, we don't get them in trouble because that testimony doesn't stick. But according to Yochanan, Chatzi Davar does stick, and so therefore, if one group says we saw him kidnap, and one group says we saw him sell them, so that's enough to establish, and therefore that man can get punished. Whoever Reuben, they're saying he did these things, so they can get punished. And if they're made of Eidim Zomimim, you can punish them, because they hold of Chatzi Davar, a half a matter. And that's the machloket. Now, the Gemara says, even though he says you need to have a full davar, a full matter, he says there's a certain case that looks like a half a matter, but really it's a full matter. What is this? Ve'edim achronim shel ben sorer more shehuzmu shenahargin mitoch sheochlim lomar harishonim lahalakato banu v'hainu achrini kulo davar ka'avdei le. Okay, so we'll establish here the fact. Number one, ben sorer more. We already saw this. Ben sorer more gets skila if he gets the warning. There's witnesses that he stole from his father, and he ate and he drank a certain amount, meat and wine. Okay, now we saw the halacha. The first time he does it, and there's witnesses to the effect, they bring him to Beit Din, and they give him akot. Right? They give him the lashes, and then if there's witnesses again to it, he does it again, and the witnesses again, and the warning and everything. They bring him, and this time they kill him. Okay, so you might think, says Chizkiah, that it's two separate. It's chatzi davar because you need it to happen twice. So you need two sets of witnesses. So it's chatzi davar. And if it's chatzi davar, how could you ever kill the guy? Because you need, according to Chizkiah, a full testimony. So he says it is a full testimony. Why? Because the first group of witnesses who came and said, we said it the first time, what happened afterwards? The boy got in trouble. They gave him akut. That ended that testimony. The fact that there was a result that happened from it, that ended the testimony. And that was the first idut. Now, it's been established he did these things. But now the second group, Ukayam, they're not connected to the first group. The status is affected because he already did it once. Now he's doing it a second time. He's going to get killed for it. But the witnesses are not connected to the first group of witnesses. And that's Chizkiah's differentiation of what's a chatzi davar. How do you define chatzi davar? So according to Chizkiah, chatzi davar is if I need two groups to establish one resolution. But if I have two groups and each one establishes its own resolution, then it's not considered a half a testimony. It's considered a full testimony. That is what Chizkiah is saying over here. So comes Rav Papa, and Rav Papa says, 1 second. So if that's the truth, that it leads to a resolution, whether it be makot, whether it be that, whatever it is. Ihachi eid mechira nami likleta mitoch sheyochli edignebo loymar lahalakato banu. So says Rav Papa Chizkiah, you said by the case of the guy kidnapping and stealing that each one is a chatzi davar. Why? The first group, the ones who came and said he kidnapped, they should cause that this man get makot. Because he kidnapped, which is a lav. You're not allowed to kidnap. It's a lav. So give him makot. And then the second group, they come and say he sold. Now he's chayav mitah. Okay, so if you're saying that each one leads to its own resolution, then this is what's happening here as well. It's not a chatzi davar. It's a davar shalom. It's a complete testimony because the first group comes and says he kidnapped, so he gets makot. Second group comes and says he sold, and now he can get executed for that. And the Gemara says, and don't think and don't think Chizkiah said you do not give him makot if he just kidnapped somebody. Don't say that he doesn't say that. Why? Because we have a right that teaches what? Chizkiah Rabbi Yochanan. There was a machloket Chizkiah Rabbi Yochanan by Eidi Genev Nefesh Huzmu. They come and say that this guy kidnapped, and then they were found to be Edom Zomim. So Chizkiah Rabbi Yochanan, they had a machloket. Chad Omar Loikin, the Chad Omar ain't Loikin. One says he gets makot from Edom Zomim, one says he doesn't, meaning that you do whatever you did to the other guy. So one means that you could give the guy who kidnapped lashes, and according to the other opinion, you can't. So Amrinan to stein Chizkiah Amar Lokin. You must say in Chizkiah who says he gets makot. Why? Because Chizkiah said you don't kill him, right? You don't kill him, so because it's chatzi davar. The Rabbi Yochanan, and it can't be Rabbi Yochanan, even the Aman Nargin, because he said to kill them, right? According to Rabbi Yochanan, even the guys who just said he kidnapped, right? They can technically still get the death penalty. Right? Because if they're found out to be Edom Zomim, and the Edom Mechira Edom Zomim, right? So they also get a death penalty. Even the Amar Nargin, since they can possibly be killed because of their testimony that he kidnapped, Havele Lav, Shinitan Azarat Mitad Bedin. B'chol Lav, Shinitan Azarat Mitad Bedin, in Lokin Alab. There's halakha. If you can get in trouble by being killed for what you're saying, for what you're doing, then you can't get another punishment, right? We saw this a couple of times already. Same idea. Since these witnesses who are saying that he kidnapped can technically be killed for this, they cannot get makot. So if they cannot get makot, according to Yochanan, and there's a machok of Yochanan and Rabbi and Chizkiah, if you can give makot or not. So Rabbi Yochanan says no makot. So it must be Chizkiah says you give him makot. Okay. And if the kidnapper can't get lashes, so why are you giving the other ones lashes? Meaning that the guy who's being testified to that he kidnapped, according to Chizkiah, gets lashes. If he gets lashes, that ends that resolution, right? That's a resolution to the first Edim. And the first Edim came, and they gave testimony that he kidnapped, and he gets makot for it. So that's it. It's the end. So now the second group comes and says he sold him. That's Edim Mechira. So according to Chizkiah, you should believe it because it's not a chatzi davar. Both of them are davar shalim. Right? It's exactly like the case of Ben Tzar and Mara. First he gets makot, and the second time he does it, he gets death penalty. Same here. First witnesses come, they get him makot because of that. Second witnesses come, he gets the death penalty. So why is Chizkiah arguing over here? So Ela Amara Papa. Rather, Papa says, "Be'edei mechira kuli ama lo pligi din hargin." You're right. You're right. You're 100% right. Chizkiah also holds this. Chizkiah says that Edei Mechira is a separate set. And the Edei Mechira, if they found to be Edom Zomimim, they can get mitah. Keep pligi. And what are they arguing about? They're arguing about those who say he kidnapped. The witnesses who say he kidnapped. Chizkiah Amar Ein Hargin. גנבה לחודה קיימה ומכירה לחודה קיימה. יוחנן אמר נהרגין, גנבה תלכלתה, דמכירה היא. So now listen to this. What is the machloket Chizkiah and the Rabbi Yochanan? What is the machloket? The machloket is as follows. How do you view the testimony? How do you view the testimony? So according to Chizkiah, there's two parts here. There's the geneva, and there's mechira. There's the kidnapping, and there's the selling. For the kidnapping, you give the guy makot, and for the selling, you give the guy death. So each one is separate. So if they both made Edom Zomimim, both groups, the first group that came, they say we just gave him makot, so you have to give them makot, right? And the second group, they try to kill him, so you kill them, right? That's the way Chizkiah learned. But Rabbi Yochanan, he says no. It's not two separate testimonies. It's two halves of a testimony. It's chatzi davar. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, you could use chatzi davar. So if they're made Edom Zomimim, you kill all of them. That's the machloket. Do you kill the Edom Geneva for being Edom Zomimim or not? According to Chizkiah, you don't, because it's a separate testimony that leads to makot. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, it is. You can still get mitah because it's part of the same testimony. It's just a hatzi davar. Okay, that's another way of looking at it. Now comes Umader Rabbi Yochanan. Yochanan comes and he admits and he says, even though I say hatzi davar, right? Even though I say this case of the kidnapping and the selling is a hatzi davar, right? I'm not viewing it as Chizkiah as two different cases, but rather one. However, I agree with the case of Ben Sorer Moreh that there it is two separate cases, right? There it is two separate cases because there you definitely get makot. That's what the Torah says, right? Here, Yochanan holds that you don't get makot for just saying he kidnapped, right? Because he says that they can get killed for it. So they get killed for it, they can't get makot. So it's not a resolution, right? So, but Ben Sorer Moreh, they do get makot. So therefore, it is a resolution. Therefore, it is a separate thing, and it's not chatzi davar, but rather each one is a davar shalim. So now, Amar Abaya, based on this halachic principle of how to view a chatzi davar or not, so Amar Abaya, kol moedim ben tzarmer. There was one case that everyone agrees by a sorer moreh, and there's another case, kol moedim ben tzarmer. Another case that everyone agrees by sorer. And there's one case that they argue, right? So everyone agrees. Everyone agrees the first Adam that come and they're the separate case, right? Because everyone holds there's a resolution there. The guy gets makot. According to everybody, according to Chizkiah, according to Yochanan, the Torah says he gives the guy the first time makot. So that's the resolution. So it's not connected. And everyone agrees in the second case. Where the second group of witnesses come by Ben Solomon. So the second group, they are its own davar shanem. Therefore, if they you kill them, you can kill based on their testimony. You can kill them based on their testimony. So therefore, it's its own davar shanem, and everyone agrees that because each one has its own resolution. Machlok ben Solomon. And what's the machlok ben Solomon? Shnaim omrim befanenu ganav, ushnaim omrim befanenu acham. Oh, so what's the case? You know, in the previous cases, the witnesses came and they said we saw him steal and we saw him eat. But in this case, two witnesses say we saw him steal from his father, and another two witnesses say we saw him eat the meat and drink the wine. So it's 2 and 2. Each one is saying half of the testimony. Okay, so now you come to Hatzi Davar, because no one in it, just because stealing doesn't get a resolution, and just because he ate doesn't get a resolution. You need to have both of them to get the final resolution that you need here. So it's called a Hatzi Davar. So according to Chizkiah, we don't hold a Hatzi Davar. So therefore, nothing happening here. No one gets in trouble. There's no Hatzi Davar. It doesn't work. According to Yochanan, you take Hatzi Davar. Since you take Hatzi Davar, everybody here is in trouble because Hatzi Davar is accepted by all, right? By Rabbi Yochanan. The Halacha L'Maaseh is like Rabbi Yochanan and the Rabbanan. The Hatzi Davar does work, and we accept that testimony. Amar Rav Asi says Rav Asi. What happens if you have a case of Edei Mechira? Okay, just Edei Mechira. Just Edei Mechira, meaning nobody came and says he kidnapped. Two witnesses come and say he sold somebody. Edei Mechira b'nefesh shehuzmu ein nargid. You don't kill them. These Edom Zomim, if they're friends with Edom Zomim. Why? Because the guy who they're blaming can say, what are you talking about? What do you mean I sold somebody? Yeah, I sold a slave. You have no proof. You haven't established the fact that he was kidnapped. So I sold somebody. Yeah, he's my slave. Omar Yosef. Who's Rav Asi going according to? Can it be Akiva? He's going to be Akiva. Since the guy's saying only half a thing, you can't believe him. He just sold it. Amar le'Abaya, one second. And if according to the rabbis you would kill him? How many talk Kamar? Because he can say, I sold my slave. Even according to the Rabbanan and Hatzi Davar, you don't have the other half. You only have half that he sold. You don't know half. You haven't established the fact that he's been kidnapped. Even the Rabbanan. As long as there is no witnesses. So the kidnapping. So what are you really telling me? Of course, if you're missing the establishment of that this guy was kidnapped, then there's no talk here. So you know what this case is needed for? With the Edei Geneva come afterwards. Right? So you might have thought that now it has been established. But the Gemara says, still, why? If it's been established after the fact, that's not good. The problem with this can claim that they not know the court would ever receive testimony of kidnapping. Right? They can say, we didn't know the guy's going to come. And the defendant can say, yeah, whatever you saw me kidnapping was later case. It wasn't this case. So there's no connection, so to speak. So why are you telling me? The akam ramzeh ramuzeh. Mahud tema ramzeh miltahi. Mashlan ramzeh lav kelum hu. You know what happened? The Edei Mechira, the ones that saw himself, were communicating and signaling with those that were going to come right after and say Edei Geneva. So you might think that they're connected. Therefore, you should get them in trouble. No, we do not, because the establishment was not done that way. Okay, fine. That and that. So yeah. Now we move on to a new Mishnah. a little interesting Mishnah, the Mishnah of the Zaken Mamre. What is a Zaken Mamre? Zaken Mamre is a Talmud Chacham that has smicha. He's over 40 years old, and he goes against the Beit Din Hagadol. He goes against the Sanhedrin Hagadol, and he paskins different from them. Zaken Mamre, we saw, he gets the punishment of hinik, strangulation. Zaken Mamre api bedin, who goes against the word of the bedin. Shneemar ki palem mechad davar lamishpat. Take a look at note 28 and 86 before. He brings on all the psukim that we're going to be getting into, right? And it says that towards the end, the man willfully goes against the bedin or the kohen, and he's put to death. The death is hinik. The stamita is hinik. Now, how does it work? What's the story over here? First of all, you should know Shlosha betinan hayu sham. There were 3 betins on the Temple Mount. Echad yoshev petach harabayit. As soon as you come to the Temple Mount, there was one betin. Ve'echad yoshev petach hazara. And there was one betin that was in the courtyard. Ve'echad yoshev v'lishkat hagazit. And the main one, the one with 71, was in the lishkat hagazit, the chamber of hewn stone. Okay? The chamber was built into the wall of the temple courtyard itself. Half of the chamber was within the sanctified area, and half of it outside of it. Okay, so the first 2 bedins on the foot of the mountain and in the Azara, that was 23 judges, like the Sanhedrin Katana. And the one in Mishkan Gazette was just 71. So what happened? So what happens is as follows. This rabbi is in his city, and he's on the bedin there. When he gets into an argument with the bedin, what's the halacha? So they all come to Yerushalayim, and they go to the Harabayit. They go to the first bedin, and they say, "Kach darashi v'chach darashi chebarai, kach limati v'chach limdu haverai." This is the way I taught. This is the way they taught. This is the way I explained. This is the way they explained. Im shamu, if the bottom bedin knows, amrulahim, they tell him. V'im lav, and if not, ba'in lahen lo'otan shal petach hazara ve'omer. They come to the next bedin in the Azara. According to the Rambam, everybody comes. The one from the first bedin in his hometown, and now the first bedin, the bedin at the Temple Mount. They come to the second bedin of 23, and they tell him, "Kach darashti v'kach haverai, kach limati v'chamdu haverai." This is what I learned. This is what my friends learned. Im sham umar lehem. If this court knows, they tell him, "Im lav elu ve'elu ba'in lebedin hagadosh shkat hagazit." If they don't know, everyone comes up to the shkat hagazit. And from there comes out Torah to all of Israel. From that place that Hashem chose, the Torah goes out to everyone. Okay? Now, he only gets in trouble for going against the Sanhedrin Hagadol. Meaning, if the bottom Sanhedrin told him what the halacha is and then he didn't listen, you don't give him chenik. You don't strangulate him. All right? It's only if he goes against the 71, then you give him. And what's the case? Hazar le'iro. So he gets the halacha from the Sanhedrin Hagadol, the Shkat HaGazit, and he comes back home. And he continues to teach the way he was teaching. He didn't change his teaching yet. Patur. He's patur. Why? Because he's just teaching. It's theoretical. But if he says this is the halacha, and people do it, or he himself does what he thinks the halacha is, then hayab. He is liable to be killed with the penalty of Zaken Mamre, which is chenik. He's not liable until he tells people or he acts in that way. Now the Mishnah ends off, Tamid, Shora la'asot patur. But if he's a Talmud, he's a student, he's not yet 40, not yet received smicha, and he says to do halacha against the Sanhedrin Hagadol, nimtzah humuro kulo. It emerges that his strictness is his leniency. He's not authorized yet to give halacha. Therefore, no one should be listening to him in the first place. For a disciple's ruling is not to be relied upon altogether, and the law of Zaken applies only to duly ordained sage. Okay, it has to be someone who asks micha from Moshe Rabbeinu. Therefore, he doesn't ask micha. He's too young. No one should listen to him anyway. Therefore, if a Talmud is teaching the wrong thing, he doesn't get in trouble. He does not get in trouble. Okay. Tanu Banan. Based on the psukim that we saw, Tanu Banan. Ki paleh michad davar. You know what the way you paleh? You paleh lashon ben muflah. the speaking of a muflas, someone who's an expert. Talking about someone who's an expert, someone who is ordained, someone who knows halakha. This is the person that we're speaking about, not someone who just goes around saying the wrong things. But obviously, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Mimecha ze yoetz. Even if he argues with them in the calculation of the months. That's why you see that the word mimecha comes from a case of calculating months. Davar, he argues with them in davar. What's davar? Zu halacha. This is halacha Moshe Misinai. Lamishpat. Ze hadin. This is gzeir shava. If he argues in gzeir shava. Ben dam ledam. Ben dam nida ledam ledam leda ledam ziva. If you argue them with the status of the halacha of certain bloods, nida, childbirth, ziva, ben din ledin, ben din nefashot, dinim amanot, dinim makot. Whether he argues with the ben din agadol in din nefashot, dinim amanot, or dinim makot, ben nega nega, ben negei adam, negei vatim, negei vadim, vegadim. If he argues them regarding the status of tzarat, of the houses, of the people, of the clothing, divrei, elo haharomim v'harachin. This is the words of what? Of someone saying I'm going to give a certain amount of hegdish. Someone saying I'm going to make this hegdish. Someone says I'm going to give my value. Okay, and he argues with that. Also, he can get himself to hayav mitav chenik, libot dispute. This is a dispute. Zo hashkaat sota, marifat egla, v'taharat mitzorah. This is the sota, the egla rufa, and the mitzorah. They all come from disputes. And if you argue that also, you can make himself as zakim amrei. B'sha'arecha, zo lekeshecha upeya. This alludes to disputes regarding lekeshecha and peya. V'kamta, you mebetin. This means you should rise up from the betin in your city. V'alita, and you should go melamisha betin mikdash govim Eretz Yisrael. You go to Eretz Yisrael, to the betin mikdash, up onto the top, and that shows that v'alita means Eretz Yisrael is higher. Eretz Yisrael gavon mikol haaretzot. The betin mikdash is highest. And Eretz Yisrael is the highest of all the lands. Makom, melamed shamakom gorem. It must be that he goes against the makom, the place of the chamber yunstone. Okay, if he goes against that Sanhedrin Gadol, that will be the problem. Now, everything makes sense. The Beit HaMikdash is higher than Eretz Yisrael. How do I know that Eretz Yisrael is greater than all the other lands? It's higher. Because it says, ולא יאמרו עוד חי השם אשר העלה את בני ישראל מארץ מצרים. כי אם חי השם אשר העלה ואשר הביא את זה לבית ישראל, מארץ צפון מכל ארצות אשר התחלתם, שם ישועו על אדמתם. And use lashon asher ha'ela. It says in Yirmiyahu, there'll be a day we no longer say, thank you Hashem for taking us out of Mitzrayim, but rather we say, thank you Hashem for taking us out of Galut and bringing us up to Eretz Yisrael. It shows that Eretz Yisrael is the tallest of the lands. We'll end up with this last sugya on the Rabbanon Zokim Mamre and Chayiv El Adavar Shizdono Karet B'Shigagato Hatat. David Ibn Meir. Meir says, in order for the Zakim Mamre to get in trouble, he has to have argued on a case that if a person did it on purpose, he gets karet, and if he did it by accident, he has to bring a chatat. He says there has to be source in the pasuk in the Torah. Okay, not a straight up gizerad rabbanan. Rabbi Shimon Omer, even if he is arguing on one little point of the Rabbanan, he can be made as a kin mamre. Now, what's the reason? So, by my time of the Rabbi Meir, what's the reason of Rabbi Meir? He says, Gamad davar davar. He says, we learned davar davar. Says over here, if something stays away, he doesn't understand it. And it says by the Kohen, if he doesn't know the answer, right? And over there, he has to bring a chatat. Did it by accident means a chatat. If he did it on purpose, he gets karet. So avkan davar shechayav as dono karet v'ashkigato chatat. So to here, it's the case where it has to be chatat and karet. Rabbi Yehuda says, look at the pasuk. Al pi Torah sheyerucha, adika Torah v'yerucha. It has to be in the Torah, and they explain it. But if Shimon says, Shimon Bar Yochai, Shimon Bar Yochai says, whatever they say from that place, even anything they say, you go against that, it could be made a zaken mamre. However, the halacha the Rambam brings is like Rabbi Meir. Zaken mamre has to argue in a case that is hayev karet if it's done on purpose, and hayev chatat if it was done by accident. Okay, so that is the sugya for today. Any questions? Okay, Today's Lag BaOmer. Enjoy your Lag BaOmers. See you next week, Bezat Hashem.